All right, hello everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. We'll just be waiting just a couple moments to let everyone join. And during today's session, please feel free at any point to drop in any questions into the chat, and we'll make sure to address them at the end. Okay, I think we're ready to kick things off. So today we're very lucky to be joined by two special guests and former CISOs, Marene Allison and Larry Trittschuh, moderated by our very own CMO, Julie O'Brien. This is a special CISO edition for Valentine's Day and should be a very fun and informative one. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Lex. So hello, everyone, and hello, Marene and Larry. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. I hope you love the session on threat prioritization and mitigation. Before we get started, I thought it would be great to hear a little bit about each of you and your respective backgrounds. So Marene, why don't you start first?
Hi, I'm Marene Allison and former CISO at Johnson & Johnson. I started out, I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point and served in the Army. And then I joined the FBI. And after a few years at the FBI, I got out and started a string of chief security officers and VP of IT security at multiple companies.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing and welcome. Larry?
Yeah, I'm Larry Trittschuh, and oddly similar backgrounds here. So, I went to one of the other academies, so I'm an Air Force Academy grad and did 10 years in the Air Force. And as I got out, that's when I started doing consulting and ended up actually 17 years ago today was the start of my cyber journey, and when I got into cybersecurity, and have done that at GE, Synchrony Financial, Barclays, and the latest was Health Equity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. You both have really incredibly impressive defense experience in both the military as well as in technology as security leaders. I'm just curious, why is this a special combination as a CISO? Who would like to take?
Larry, you want to go first? I'll let you go.
Okay, sure.
I'll go first.
There you go. We always do, right? So
except for that Army Air Force game, right?
Oh yeah, we're not going to talk about that. So I think you're right. There's a lot of people with law enforcement, military, that type of background. Military does also tend to go, FBI, Secret Service, some of that, and so. I think strategically, right, you learn to think like a bad guy, the art of war, and you study those things. And so it applies very well when it comes to the security side of things. There are also a lot of technical roles, whether like I was a pilot, so nothing to do with computers, but you do pick up technology, the engineering backgrounds of the academies and that. And then I think, the other piece that's really important is military people tend to be very mission focused and mission oriented. And cyber and security is very, very similar in that, we get a lot of people who have that type of a background.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense, Marene.
Yeah, and mine is much like Larry's and I even had said after retiring or all the way to the end of J&J is when I raised my hand at West Point to defend against all enemies, foreign, domestic, I do it today. I did it in mission operationally from the time I was 17 years old to last year. And so it's a methodology, a way of thinking, resiliency. It's not oh, I'm going to get breached. It's how do I prevent this or mitigate this and recover from it? And I think that unique mix of understanding the threat, there is a threat coming at you. You can't build a wall big enough and you're going to be good, but it is also understanding about that threat, and if you're the target of that threat, what it means for you.
Mm-hmm. That's a great segue into the topic today, which is around threat prioritization and mitigation. So what's your take on how strategies and technologies have evolved in the past few years?
Yeah, I can start. Hey, my degree's in electrical engineering because there was no computer science. There were no computers. There was no internet. And you know, we really have come from a place where, you know, a computer was in a building and it could do, you know, 2 + 2, to today, you know, with our cell phones, we can do hundreds of times what compute power that I did when I was a cadet at West Point. And so looking at that technology, all the defenses and how you're going to align those technologies to defend and protect what you have is different. I mean, when we were on mainframes, RACF was it. We were good. We were golden. And then we moved over to client server, and you know, everybody took all their data home with them. How cool was that? And then the servers, and then now to the cloud, and then as we move into other, you know, the really the hard use of applications that are now becoming part of that infrastructure, what we're seeing is we have to be resilient and be able to look at new technologies on a like every 6-month basis.
What are your thoughts, Larry?
Yeah, you know, similar, right? I think if we look back over the last 20 years, when I first got into security, it was kind of about firewalls, right? You had the castle, you built the moat around it, and everything was great, right? So we had firewall kind of security, and then you saw the shift, and you saw this like in the vendor community too, right? It was all about the advanced persistent threat and the APTs, and everything solves the APTs. So it took it to more of a live on keyboard threat actor, and you know, again, that military kind of approach to defending the networks. And then we saw where it started to shift, and then I think it was that cloud piece where, you know, we started saying things like identity is the new perimeter, right? So the data wasn't in one place. You're in cloud, you're in applications, mobile devices, and so much more to secure. At a certain point, ransomware kind of became the threat, and so then, you know, you start seeing a lot of ransomware, hacking for hire, and things like that, to where, and it was almost like the APT tools of the, you know, a nation state actor, those got, you know, normalized, where now anyone could use those, and now you're defending against just more of the same type of a strategy from an attack. And I think now generative AI is kicking in, right? And we're starting to see a lot of generative AI and artificial intelligence. And so, you know, we'll talk a little bit about how Dazz fits into this, I'm sure. But we've got to do a little bit of both, right? So it's like, what's all the emerging technology? How are, you know, security companies and technologies going to use AI? But we got to maintain the basics as well, and it ultimately always comes down to a vulnerability, whether that vulnerability is a person or a patch that's missing or whatever, and that's where that attack starts.
Well, if the landscape, the attack surface has gotten increasingly complex, then how should you go about prioritizing threats today and dealing with them? What's your advice?
So it's hard, right? I think we're all in security. You're seeing more and more focus on being a risk leader instead of just security, right? Before it was about the ones and zeros. It's like, hey, we're secure, and now it's a much more risk-based approach, and trying to understand, again, in that attack surface, right? I need to protect the most sensitive areas first, right? I need to protect my identities. You know, where is the sensitive data? You really have, you know, we talk about CISOs having a seat at the table. You really have to become a business leader and understand the business that you're defending, so that you know what the key areas are. And this is where, you know, prioritizing that is hard. I think a lot of us have done it on spreadsheets or manual. You got a bunch of tools. There's no, you know, everybody wants that elusive single pane of glass. And so that's one of the reasons I came on with Dazz, is because I think in the vulnerability space, it gives us that capability, as well as some extra capabilities of, you know, partnering with our developers and getting insights into kind of that agile, you know, software lifecycle.
Absolutely. Marene, is there anything you'd like to build on that?
Yeah, Larry said it, and I'm going to put the Army pointedness to it versus the Air Force. Is that we as CISOs have become. It was easier prior when there wasn't a network that went outside our four walls. That thing called the internet. And as we've opened up, what has happened is we can no longer just be IT security professionals. We have to be business leaders. Before it used to be, oh, it's the business's data and it's somewhere and it's on these computers and they sit here and I protect them. It is now evolved, and especially with the cloud, and I call them flow through networks. And because everything's flowing through your network and you just don't want it to flow out. And that becomes very important to understand what's important to the business. And also, as we've evolved our security operations centers, hey, the IT or the cybersecurity tools will tell you it's the same alert, same vulnerability. But if you don't understand that one is, don't even worry about it, it's not going to matter. And the other one is, oh my God, I got to get to this yesterday. That becomes very, very important, especially in very large, complex organizations. And I would tell you that, even a large corporation 20 years ago was so much easier than a small company today because of things like APIs and bots and generative AI or, other AI that you're using for your business. And the difference between the threat. I mean, it used to be, and Larry's in my day, when we were in the military, it was great. There were nation states, and they were over there, and they were looking for this. And then all of a sudden, it changed to criminal looking for money had as much capability as most nation states. And that really changed it the most, that you have to understand your infrastructure, you have to understand those vulnerabilities, and you have to understand, I must protect this now. There is no other, the sense of urgency has risen.
Thank you for that. You both also came from pretty highly regulated industries and companies in your past. We're all familiar with the SEC disclosure rules for material incidents. How should security leaders prepare for responding to them?
Oh, for me, I think they should embrace it. This is absolutely, I mean, there's a moment of like, oh crap, I don't have this ready yet. I know in the companies that I always had a really good relationship with my internal auditors and my legal counsel. When John Warner had come out a few years ago and said, disclosure, 10K disclosures with the SEC, it was like, oh, thank God I'm in a big company. And then, oh crap, I'm in a big company, right? So the materiality number, but that's the thing that I would say is CISOs, I see a lot of CISOs trying to like move out of their lane. And, my advice is you're going to have to give an input to materiality, but you don't own the materiality decision. And there will be some systems, but likely in concert with your CTO or your CIO, you make the decision from a business continuity perspective. Probably main one would be the email system. Every business I know of runs on email, and if that goes down, and 90% of them are on Office 365. If that's out, then everything is, what is your other course of action? And that really is the CISO now being able to be that interplay between the business, IT, and corporate governance versus, hey, I got a new role. No, this is a nice, I call it the corporate glue, the corporate risk glue.
And I agree, right? I agree with the embrace it. I think, and I'll separate kind of the enforcement aspect and the enforcement section from the SEC from the, I think there's some work to do on enforcement still. But if you look at what they have in the guidance, all 160 some pages of this, these are things that were in the Ks before. If you're looking at companies, I think, CISOs have been saying, I want a seat at the table. This is what it means to have a seat at the table. And it's understanding what these requirements are, understanding what a K is, what a Q is, the difference between an 8 and a 10. And so I think we all have to learn that. As Marene said, we've got to be business leaders. And part of that too is having that network, both internally and externally, whether it's your general counsel, outside counsel, et cetera. You've got to partner with them, and then you've got to partner with your peers and others, and understand, what are other companies doing? What does materiality mean? 4 days, 4 business days, plenty of time, I think, from materiality. I think they've done that the right way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well said. So I had mentioned this when I was promoting that the two of you are going to be joining us on Wednesday Wisdom, that it is so exciting to have 2 Fortune 50 CISO giants with national security backgrounds, being part of our advisory board. And I'm just curious, like, we're pretty small. We're still growing. We're growing fast. But what led your interest to collaborating with Dazz at our size?
Would you go, Larry?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll start on this one. And so for me, it was a little bit a matter of timing. So, I'm trying to figure out what the next gig is. This has freed me to look at advisory opportunities, to talk with venture capital, private equity, and those types of firms. And it's a really interesting aspect of security that a lot of us don't get into. And so the timing piece was one. And then, I've been burnt as a customer before using newer, smaller companies, startups, being at companies like a GE or a Barclays, right? Like massive organizations, Johnson & Johnson. It's hard to use some of these startups. And, we all watch Shark Tank, right? So it's a little bit about the technology, but a lot of it's about the team too. And so for me, I sat down. What's a problem that I've had as a CISO? Is this solving a problem? How does it compare to all the other technology that's out there? And then I think even more importantly, who's behind it? And everybody that I've met at Dazz, right? I think from the top down, it's just a great team, and so that's why I came on board.
And since you mentioned the problem statement, so what were some of the problems that specifically you were trying to solve that you think Dazz is a great fit for?
Sure. I was on talking with somebody about Dazz earlier today, and we have all these tools, but there's a lot of manuals. So you're scanning for vulnerabilities, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's in the containers, you're on-prem, and it's all these individual tools, and then a lot of us, it's manual trying to figure out, rectify that with CMDB or assets, prioritization, et cetera. And so we spend a lot of time and cycles doing that, and just this ability to do that, tie cloud with on-prem, like kind of do all of it, automate those workflows, I think is really beneficial. And, I'm even looking back and regretting how I've approached some things in the past as a CISO, right? I've worked with my vulnerability team and I've said, look, it's our job to find the problems, and hold the developers, hold the technologists accountable to meeting the SLAs. Using something like this, you can be a much better partner and partner with them on what's the actual root cause, what are the fixes that we need, and the right prioritization. And so I think it'll make me a more nuanced, security leader going forward.
Great.
Yeah, no, and when you ask why, well, first of all, I want to ask, has anyone been able to tell Merav Bharat no?
And so for those of you who don't know, Merav is our CEO, and she's a force of nature.
Merav and I met at an HISAC meeting, and we hit it off. With being from Israel and having served in the armed forces, two Army women together, in a field of a lot of male faces, was absolutely amazing. Understanding the threat, that it wasn't, and as we see with Israel today, under threat all the time. And that was truly, when you're in a Fortune 50 company, you are under threat all the time, and understanding who it is and where it is. And as Larry and I have both said, you know, when it was like contained on the mainframe, it was really, really easy. But then we threw it all out everywhere and trying to find it. And then even things like, you know, the things that we put in place that helped us years ago, firewalls, actually firewalled us off from parts of our business that we didn't own. And so being able to get that visibility was absolutely amazing. And then, you know, not highly publicized, because I got a lot of offers from a lot of people. I felt that with as few women there are in cybersecurity and few CEOs and founders in cybersecurity, I wanted to support women in that role. And if I could use my abilities to help promote a technology that I felt was wonderful, that why not do that?
Well said. Thank you. We're so excited to have you both working with us. Really, really a pleasure. So I can't believe we're actually getting to our last question. We're doing great on time. So my last question for you both, call it a lightning round. So what are the top 2 or 3 things that you think CISOs should be thinking about as we're going into 2024, thinking about investing in, thinking about new ways to handle threats, thinking about their strategies? And why don't we start, Larry, with you first?
Sure. So for me, I think, you know, generative AI, right? That was the thing, you know, last year, and it's going to continue to be the thing. It's something we in security tend to like hate change and hate that advancement, and we have to embrace it, and we've got to, you know, use it as a force for good. We'll continue to see cloud. There's a lot, you know, it's hybrid, so get used to the hybrid cloud, the hybrid model, and some of that, and SaaS type applications. So more and more of that, and, you know, again, well aligned with Dazz. And then, you know, my last one is kind of what I mentioned earlier, which is just you got to do the basics. So it always starts with a vulnerability, and you know, so many of us being technologists, you want to embrace that exciting new technology, and that you know, you're looking for that silver bullet, and it doesn't exist. And so just going back and doing basic blocking and tackling, understand vulnerabilities, understand risk, prioritization is something that we all have to continue to keep our eyes on.
All right, thank you, Marene.
Yeah, you know, the basics are definitely there. You know, security 101, just do that, do it right, and rinse and repeat. Know where your assets are. I think that's, you know, partly the technology of the cloud and where everything can go. You're going to have to know where your stuff is. The third thing I would say is that the SEC, if you're in one of those companies that doesn't have a mature governance model, and you're being relied on to be the one to create things like materiality, call uncle or call aunt and say, wait a minute, we need to bring somebody in here to look at this, because you could be setting yourself up to be taking more responsibility in a corporation than you should or want to. And even with D&O insurance, it doesn't mean you're going to be protected. And then the fourth thing I'm going to tell you, and I could have talked to myself when I was a sitting CISO till I was blue in the face, and I never would have listened. Your mental health is important. You are under so much stress. So much is going on. The world is changing. All of that is happening. It's okay to raise your hand and say, hey, wait a minute. It's okay to take a 2 or 3 week vacation. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your families, and you owe it to the mission of protecting cyberspace. Take a break and be better.
Thank you. Well said. Well, with that, we should, I guess, take a break and go back to enjoying Valentine's Day. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Wonderful to have you both working with us, and I greatly value your time and your input. So thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us. Go Army, beat Navy.
Go Air Force. The other two don't matter.
Back over to you, Lex.
Thanks everyone so much for joining this great session. And thank you again, yeah, Larry and Marine for joining. And in case you haven't seen it yet, we have a new CSA State of Security Remediation Report, hot off the press. You can check it out on our website now, and we'll also be including it in the follow-up email tomorrow. And we hope to see you next time for some more fun sessions in March. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.